Shabbos Daf Kuf Chav Dal. Today's email comes to us from Naftali Rishel from Eretz Yisrael. He says, perhaps in order to increase viewership of the shir, once people watch, they'll get hooked. Maybe we could offer, if people get other people to join, we will learn for them, the kollel will learn for them, you will learn for them. Maybe we'll fly people in as an incentive if they get many people. The bottom line is, research says, he says, that once a person gets a streak going, they will not stop, especially since the shir is so addictive. If you have a great idea, please share it with us. If you have a great story unrelated to this, please share it with us. Whatever, as long as we increase Harbatz's Torah, even if they go to another shir, just let's get people hooked to the daf. As we learned, Nechemia ben Chachaliah came along and he said everything was mutter, there was no such thing as muktzah. He said everything is muktzah. Says the Gemara, Rebbe Lazar says there are 4 Mishnais and Brises that must have happened before they started relaxing muktzah. And Rabbah argues on all 4. The first one is our sugya, medoicha. If you have a mortar and pestle, it's a klish malachli l'isur, you're not allowed to crush vegetables on Shabbos. So you can't move it. Let's say you want to flip it over, use it as a chair, not permitted. That must be before they started relaxing muktzah. Rabbah says no. That goes according to Rebbe Nechemia, who says you cannot touch any klish malachli l'isur unless it's for its designated purpose. You can't use it as a chair if it's made to crush vegetables. Second thing is, on the shulchan, we had lechem apanim, and in order for there not to be any mold between the bread, they put small rods. Those rods are klish malachti laheter. They're to hold bread. Yet the Mishnah says you cannot touch them on Shabbos. You have to remove them before Shabbos in order to take out the bread, and then you put the new breads in on Shabbos, and on Matzi Shabbos you reinsert those rods. It must be before they relaxed muktzah. Says Rabbah, not true. Perhaps it was after they relaxed muktzah. Yet it's only there to prevent mold. You can wait a couple of hours until Shabbos is over. You don't have to touch these rods on Shabbos. There's another halacha that for the Korban Pesach, in order to remove the hide, they would put the animal on a hook. Not enough hooks Erev Pesach, so many people. So you use a pole. You put a pole from person to person, from shoulder to shoulder. You hang the animal on that. But if Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, don't use a pole. Use your hand. Put your hand on your friend's shoulder. He puts his hand on your shoulder. Must be before they relaxed muktzah. Says Rabbah, not true. It's possible, since there's a way to get out of it, you don't have to use a pole. Why use a pole? Use your hand. So these are the things that we have a machlokes. There's another concept called glustera. There's a bolt, and on top of the bolt there's a knob. And you put it in the ground, and that shuts the door, closes the door, locks the door. One man holds, you're not allowed to carry that on Shabbos unless you do titul min atzad, you drag it. Must be before the gzeira. Says Rabbi, no, perhaps it goes according to Rabbi Yanai. The halacha is you're not allowed to carry from your house into a chutzner, but the chutzner you're allowed to carry from chutzner to chutzner to your neighbor's chutzner. Here the shaila is the threshold that's outside of the door, is that considered as part of the chutzner, and therefore I'm allowed to carry this bolt, or perhaps it's considered as part of my house, and that's why this mandomer holds you're not allowed to carry from the house into the chutzner. We have a Mishnah that's explained by Rabbah and Rava. Rava adds one more step to Rabbah. Rabbah says the Mishnah comes to say that according to Tanakama, klish malachti laheter, such as a bowl, a cup, you're allowed to carry it. Let's say you need the place, even just not forget the malacha. I want to drink from it, but even I need some room on the table. I'm allowed to move it over. If it's a klish malachti leisur, such as a hammer, only letzarich gufa if I have to crack open a nut, but not letzarich mekayma if it's on my bed and I want to go to sleep. I cannot move it. Comes from Nechemia and says when it comes to a klish malachti laheter, like a cup, I could only move it letzarich gufa if I want to drink from it, but not letzarich mekayma. The big question in the Gemara is, so if so, how do I wash dishes? I have a dirty dish, I have a dirty bowl from Cholent. How do I bring it to the sink? L'chayra, the only reason why you bring it to the sink is because you want to make some room on the table. Says the Gemara, the reason is because it's a graf shalrei. Just like we said, you're allowed to move a mouse on Shabbos, a dead mouse, which is completely muktzah because it's disgusting, so too a bowl is disgusting. Rava adds one more step, and he says, according to the Tanakama, klish malachta laheter, not only can you move it, but you're also allowed to move it mechamel itself for loss prevention, in order that it shouldn't get damaged in the sun. Comes and klish malachti leisur, you can move it even letzarich mekayme, not only letzarich gufay, but even mekayme. You have a hammer on the table, you need the room, you move the hammer off. Says Reb Nechemia, a klish malachti leheter, you can move legufay and mekayme, but not mechamel itself. Rav holds exactly like Rava. The klish malachti leisur, you're allowed to move letzarich gufay mekayme. He says you're not allowed to move it for loss prevention. If you're worried that your kli shemalachta l'isser will get stolen, you're not allowed to move it indoors. As we said, that you're not allowed to move mechamel itself. According to Rava, why can't you move a medoicha, a mortar and pestle? We said you can move it l'tzorech gufa mekama. We must say that it's talking about you cannot move it mechamel itself. It says that on Yantiv you're not allowed to support a pot, let's say a wobbly pot. You can't put a shim of wood underneath it. The question is, why not? According to both Rab and Rava, it should be mutter l'tzorech gufay. It's a malacha. It should be okay because this is a kli shemalachta l'heter. On Yantiv, you're allowed to make fire with wood, so it's a kli shemalachta l'heter. The answer is because on Yantiv we made a gzera. This piece of wood on Shabbos is aser, so too on Yantiv. It should be mutter, but because on Shabbos it's aser. Why is this aser on Shabbos? The kli shemalachta l'isser should be mutter to do l'tzorech gufay. The answer is because it's not a kli. If it was a kli, correct, but this is something else called muktzah machmas gufay. It's like a rock. It's a piece of twig. It's just a piece of wood. It's not even a kli. Therefore, it's aser to move on Shabbos l'tzorech gufay. If you're telling me that anything that's aser on Shabbos we make aser on Yantif, why is it that you could bring fruit that you're concerned that are going to get damaged in the rain? There's a loss prevention here. You could bring them into your house through a skylight, but on Shabbos you can't. Shouldn't we make that gzera? Says the Gemara, that goes according to Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel hold that you're allowed to carry on Yantiv. Mitoich, hayil. Since it's mutter to carry l'tzorech eichel nefesh for food, so I'm allowed to carry a child, a lulav, etc. Beis Shammai say no. You can only carry food. You can't carry children in Sifrei Torah. And therefore, Beis Hillel are going to be the ones that hold it. You're allowed to bring something through skylight. And Beis Shammai say you can't. Rav Mari held like Rabbah. He asked Rava, if I have a pillow, which is a kli shemalachta l'heter, can I move it out of the sun? And Rava told him yes. He said, but why? He said, because you need it for guests. He said, but I have enough for guests. So Rava said, oh, you hold like Rabbah. If you hold like Rabbah, then for the entire world, a kli shemalachta l'heter is mutter to carry from chamel itself for loss prevention. But for you, since you hold like Rabbah, it would be aser. A broom, a sweeper, to sweep the table, if it's made out of cloth, it's a kli shemalachta l'heter, you let it move it on Shabbos. But a regular broom, in the time of the Gemara, since the floors were made out of dirt, that would be mash v'gumais, filling in the holes, it becomes a kli shemalachta l'isser, and you're not allowed to move it from the sun to the shade, but you would be allowed to move it l'tzorech gufay u'mekaymai. The Mishnah says, all kalim, all vessels, even if they break, you're allowed to move the parts, the pieces, and that is if that piece can function in some sort of melacha. So let's say if it was a bowl and it broke, so you take the bowl, the broken piece, and you cover something with it. Rabbi Yehuda says no. The only time you can move that piece is if it remains with the same function. So if it was a bowl, you could actually still put something into that small piece, but just if you could cover it, that's not considered a melacha. And Shmuel explains the machlokes is when the piece is broke on Shabbos, that the Tanna Kama says it's considered ready as a kli, and it doesn't matter what melacha does. Rabbi Yehuda says this is considered noilad. It was just born today, it's a brand new kli, and it has to be the same melacha. But it was broken on Erev Shabbos. Everybody agrees that it's a mutter for the melacha. There are three braises, says the Gemara. One says that you could make a fire with the actual kli, but not with broken parts. That goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, that says that noilad is muktzah. According to Rabbi Shimon, that noilad is not muktzah. Fits right in with the next braisa that says you could use even broken pieces for a fire. And the one that says you can't even use a real kli for a fire is Reb Nechemia, who holds that a kli is designed only for its purpose, and since this dish is not designed to make a fire out of it, it's also to move on Shabbos. Have a wonderful day.